Signs of the Southland, Sunday, October 16th, 2022. Mr. Grant, let's start with you. Tell me about cross country's weekend at Penn State and Barry.
Yeah. So Tech split the squad again. That's kind of something that they do, I'd say, a handful of times every fall, with half the team going up to Penn State for the Penn State National Open, while the other half was down in Barry. Barry was the second time they've been up there, and that was definitely a B lineup, even though the women kind of smoked everyone. The men actually finished second behind the host, and there weren't a ton of, how do I say this, other D1 schools there. So definitely not much you can take away from that. But the good news is they actually placed pretty well up in Penn State. A fourth place finish was good for obviously fourth place, but they did beat ranked Syracuse, which is something that they've done a couple of times up at Penn State in the last few years. So definitely interesting there. I wish I could say more. I have a couple of highlights that I can pull out from the actual write up that ramblinrec.com did. But when I went to go read off the results, both of the links were dead and didn't open up any other pages. So outside of those top tier finishers, Liz Galarza, James Cragen, I couldn't tell you, what other teams were up there. That being said, Galarza and Cragen, as they have throughout the year, have led the way. Galarza, that sixth year senior, big part of those really successful women's teams from a couple of years ago, and Cragen, who's kind of been a leader the last couple of years on the men's side. In terms of other notable finishes, there were a couple of other top 10 finishers. So Helena Lindsay for the women, and I think the men, everyone came in the top like 40, 42, but no one else in the top 10, while the women were all in the top 40. So really pretty similar spreads up there for them.
Let's move on to softball, Mr. Purdy.
We had the second part of the various doubleheader things that are all exhibitions that don't matter in the grand scheme of things. As in, we don't even have results or tweets to even tell you what happened when we went to Alabama. So we just know they played the game. We assume they played the games, both of them. But they still have their Beagle State game here, and then going to Dahlonega on the October 23rd. And then swimming and diving, they went and swam at the other non-Metro Atlanta city where Taqueria del Sol resides and got killed in swimming. Both teams, the men lost 180 to 119, the women 188 to 109. So effectively, the women lost one additional event than the men. So not the greatest day. I don't think it was necessarily not expected either, just because Georgia swimming has been quite the powerhouse on the women's side. Multiple Olympians in the past few years on the American team. So they've been very good for a while.
Yeah.
One note on the Alabama softball doubleheader. I was kind of interested in being a sicko and watching some preseason college softball, and there was literally nothing. Like, I mean, this is the middle of the day yesterday. We're recording this on Sunday. This was the middle of the day Saturday. And the midday slate for college football was kind of meh. It didn't get good until the
I
3:30
would note
slot.
that the Tennessee
The midday
Volunteers played in the
slate.
midday. The
No,
only
no, no,
the
no, no.
biggest
The
game.
noon, the noon,
The
the noon
Oh,
slate.
the early
Midday,
slate. Oh, the
literally
early slate.
midday.
Oh,
uh,
different language.
I was ready to come off the top rope at you
The
for that
Oh,
one,
literal
we were
Akshay.
both
But
we
midday.
were both about to.
The literal
I
midday.
have
This
no
game
love
was
lost for the Vols, but that was objectively an electric game. And also in the early day, Brett Bielema, wow, I can't even say that.
Philemon?
And my Illinois
Bielema,
Fighting Illini, I don't know why they're mine, but I guess that's my thing. They
Chicago's
totally
team,
just
Illinois, in
they
Urbana-Champaign.
smushed Minnesota. And
They
if
did.
that's not the
They did.
Midwestern bully ball that you need from your day, Michigan just kind of turning Penn State into dust. You need to appreciate these dusty college football smushings more, man. You got to find joy in
Disagree.
it.
Disagree. Unless Tech moves to the Big Ten, then I will
I can't.
appreciate
Oh,
them.
you stole my thunder. I was about to say I can't wait for us to be on the receiving end of these games in the next 5 years. But damn it,
You want to be smushed into dust? I have questions
I'd
about that.
rather get
Actually,
smushed by Michigan than by who we currently play. It'll be
Also,
much.
money.
Yeah,
Money.
I
speaking of
will take
money,
that.
ITA, Southeast Regionals, Mr. Grant, for women's
I don't
tennis.
get what that has to do with money, but Anyways, women's tennis hosted ITA Southeast Regionals at Byers. It's actually ongoing. So if you find yourself with not much to do on Monday, go check out Carol Lee and also Carol Lee and Kate Sharabura, who are in the regional finals. Lee is in it in the singles, and the two of them have teamed up for the doubles. Lee did dispatch a couple of, I guess, challengers in the same day. That would be Mary Madel and Dasha Vidmanova, former from UCF, latter from UGA, on her way to the final, while Kylie Bilchev and Alejandra Cruz fell in the semifinals to Florida. Mahak Shane was Tech's next highest singles finisher, who fell in quarters to UGA's Leah Ma 6-1, 6-1, while Cruz, who had lost earlier, lost in the consolation final in tiebreak to Emily de Oliveira of Florida. So lots of Tech all over all three draws, I would say. So pretty good there.
And close us out with some club hockey.
No, we don't have to talk about this one. They got whooped by the boys from, I don't know, Taqueria del Sol Town or whatever we're calling it today. I got to say, my only question is, what happened to live tweeting? They used to do a great job posting the goals, who scored, all that stuff, and it's a lot harder to find that now. But they are in a much cleaner web-designed league, so CHF is really easy to find period-by-period scoring breakdowns. So I guess it's a give and take there.
Wait, now I have to, as the only software engineer on this podcast, I now have to actually determine this for myself. Give me 1 second. It's fine.
CHF versus what they used to have is a big step up, dude.
Okay, but it's fine. It could be. It's fine. It's all fine. I think it could be improved.
Are you looking at CHF or the GT hockey site? Because I'm talking about the governing body.
Yeah, I'm chf.rsports with a Z, mind you, .com.
Is that really the URL?
Take this out if you want, Akshay. Take this out if you want, Akshay. But is there any site that you wouldn't say it's fine? There's things that could be improved. Is there any site you wouldn't have said that about?
No, all sites. There's always room for improvement.
You mean even your beloved game on paper isn't perfect?
Yes, there's so much room for improvement. Are you kidding me? Every time I look at the site, I find something that I kick my butt for. Anyway, we're getting way off topic. Let's get us back on the tracks. Let's head over to the Edge for some administrative analysis. Georgia Tech has hired a new athletic director as of the 14th of October. Jay Batt from Alabama, who is the number 2 at Alabama under Greg Byrne, is now the athletic director at Georgia Tech. Some comments from President Angel Cabrera. Quote, "We are excited to welcome Jay to Georgia Tech. His leadership experience at one of the most competitive programs in the nation and his extraordinary track record in fundraising and revenue generation will bring great value to Georgia Tech. As a former student athlete, Jay has a keen appreciation for what it takes for students to compete at the highest level while pursuing a degree at a top academic institution. He values and shares our culture of excellence and integrity and his commitment to student well-being and success." Yada, 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 end quote, end quote. There's a lot more institutional press release stuff in there. The one note that I want to add before we move on to some actual analysis is Jay was on the UNC soccer team, the men's soccer team. He played goalkeeper. I actually believe he was number 23. So UNC number 23, Jay Batt. Actually, before we get to other notes, Jake, as someone who is very invested in the not the Collins regime, but the Stansbury regime, how do you feel about this hire? Let's set the table that way.
I'm going to actually do some interesting, I'm not going to call it interesting because that's for the listeners to judge, but a little bit of foreshadowing is I was listening before we got on to the Pastner Tipoff ACC media days, and I kept waiting for him to say the phrase Mr. Stansbury because I was like, man, like it just seems like something that he says all the time. So, something before we get in too deep on Batt, it's something that I think we're going to have to do is to calibrate our expectations, calibrate our understandings, right? Because we just got very used to 6 years of a very specific type of athletic director, a Georgia Tech man, a letter winner, all these things that were being said were couched with kind of the hazy glory of Shutter, the Black Watch, and all that came with that, as well as national champions in the 90s, Bobby Cremins the late 80s. So we're really going to have to make this pivot, right? And as somebody who did resonate with some of the things there, right? I love history. I think Tech's a really unique place, and I was excited that it seemed like we had somebody who was doing a good job raising money and raising the profiles of a lot of these non-rev sports that we do have. That being said, just interesting that that we're going for I guess tangentially ACC. I mean, he did win a national title at UNC, but a lot of his primary experience is outside of the conference. It's certainly not at Georgia Tech. So interesting to hear, especially for a department that does need revenue generation. And quite frankly, while it seemed like the last guy was pretty darn good at it, I know you're the money guy and the expert on that. So it seems like it's already a point of need, because it doesn't seem like the debt has really gotten all that much better for Georgia Tech. So I know you kind of put me on the spot with the Stansbury thing, and it's tough to go from, hey, like volleyball did get really good, but how much of that is Stansbury just saying like, hey, give them some money, versus Michelle being able to put in her system, right, and hire good coaches and do good recruiting. Because at the end of the day, it's coaches and players that scheme and play to win games. It's not, Todd firing a money cannon from the roof of Edge and being like, kapoof, Elite Eight, or like, boom, women's basketball has Nell now. But it was a great hire. But I don't know, that he kind of sprung this question on me, so I'm a little bit all over the place there. Somebody bail me out.
Jack, bail him out. Give me some of your opening thoughts on this hire before we dive in a little deeper.
You've given me a great image for Jay Batt as his first move as athletic director to go on top of Edge and gather a bunch of students around and just have a money cannon, just firing it out there.
I will interrupt you 1 second. They literally did this. For the first spring game of the Collins tenure. The athletic department handed Rec Club money, like the money guns with fake money and dollars loaded in. With Jeff Collins' face and.
I have that somewhere. I have that dollar somewhere. I'm not going to look for it.
It had a 3 on it. It was a $3 money down bill.
I saved those. I had one that lived in my pocket for my wallet for the longest time, because I just thought it was so funny that was with the rest of my cash.
I had a plan to take one and have him sign it one day, but then he lost to the Citadel, and I was like, I don't need to save this anymore.
To go back to what the actual question was, though, I mean, from what I could, this doesn't seem out of line from what was like presented as needs during the press conference that happened when Brent Key got introduced, and Cabrero's like, yes, here's what we're going for now, and here's where we know the needs are. And it seems like Batt has the experience to at least know exactly what the problems are here, and has track record taking care of it. Also, I just think it's worth noting that Alabama's athletic department is just so different from so many others in the nation, just because it's gotten so massive. They run a very different kind of ship there, that the COO of Alabama athletics is a very different COO position compared to any other country. Now, other big schools like that, Clemson, Ohio State, Michigan, you're probably touching that same stratosphere, but still, it's been Bama. It's its own name. So in that sense, I think I appreciate that this will not be much of anything new.
The interesting thing when you mentioned the Alabama being a completely different ship to run, something that stuck with me is I went to go check out his Twitter handle, and he had retweeted them opening up. It looks like a team store, but in a lot of colleges, like, between the three of us, we've been to dozens of different schools for away games. I'm sure you stop in a bookstore or stuff like that just to see what they've got. I know I have, at least. And all bookstores kind of look like, I don't want to say like quaint and collegey, but this store that Alabama was opening up that he had like tweeted and like had interacted with looked like a professional store. And it's hard to like describe that difference unless you're like a sicko like me that goes to way too many sporting events of way too many types, but they look different, right? It's all sleek. There's a different kind of stuff on offer, right? You're not going to go into one of those and get like a Chicago Cubs School of Engineering. But you know what I mean? Like it looked like a very professional operation.
Yeah, and I'm watching the video on the other screen right now, actually, and I think the best way to describe this is it looks like if you walked into the Falcons team store. Like it is the exact layout, the exact I mean, maybe not the exact
shiny
layout,
glass,
but like the exact kind of glass, the exact kind of branding, the exact kind of organization, like the racks, the way that everything is structured and put together. It looks like you are walking into the team store of a professional football team. And it's not like you're walking into we now have this massive clothing department that's adjoined to a Barnes and Noble.
And I will note, and we brought this up in the recent series engineering a program, just like we just lacked a ton of just being able to present ourselves well in merch specifically, and being able to like make ourselves look like we know what we're doing in the public eye when it comes to just the basic stuff like that. And Bama takes care of the little things very, very well, which is why they win national titles in football and are very good in other sports as well.
And also lose to Tennessee, apparently.
Yes. That's a once every 15 years kind of thing, though. That said, I mean, that kind of thinking, though, for that to work beyond just the football team, like, that has to be a top-down thing to make an athletic department like it is at Bama what it is now. Like, you take care of the little things like that. You do whatever you can to make things as good as they possibly can be. And I think all of us here will say Tech's been trying for sure, but there's just been places where it's been like, okay, where was the thinking here? And if Batt's seen that kind of institutional progress like Bama has had, that's something that I appreciate.
Just a couple of notes before I get my thoughts. But his experience at Alabama, he was the senior associate director, and he started that role. Senior Associate Director of Athletics starting in 2017. He was responsible for guiding revenue generating, including charitable giving, ticketing, Tide Pride, which I assume is their donation program, and other revenue sources. Promoted to COO and Senior Deputy Athletic Director in 2021, and then Executive Deputy Director, COO, and Chief Revenue Officer in 22. He was also responsible for basically everything management and administration wise around the newest a capital initiative for Alabama athletics, which is, just get the scope of this, by the way, 10 years, $600 million. Compare that to Georgia Tech's most recent athletics fundraising initiative, which was 3 years and $125 million. It's interesting. The scope, like you said, I think you said it really well when you talk about the scope and the organization of Alabama compared to an athletic department at Georgia Tech. You're jumping from, let's say, running the CIO position, just the information technology department of like a Fortune 10 firm, and now being the CEO of maybe like a Fortune 500 firm, right? There's just this gap.
That's a great way to put it.
There's a gap and that metaphor goes deeper too, right? You're talking, it's not only an organization and standard, it's revenue and operations, right? Alabama runs, like you said, all of these sports teams and does it well. Speaking of those sports teams, actually, if you're worried about non-revenue athletics and money being diverted from those in order to take care of football as the prime moneymaker, a bunch of Batt's Twitter timeline is Alabama soccer retweets. So nice. Take that for what it's worth, but I think that's pretty cool to see that he had, like, he's signal boosting that kind of thing.
I'm going to tinfoil hat this. Angel Cabrera, big soccer guy, big soccer guy.
On the record, by the way, saying that he
is big soccer guy, national champion soccer guy, divert money into soccer program guy, private companies raising funds to cap the connector. We bring all three of these together. Boom. Now we have a soccer team. There we go. We've done it. J. Batt is Angel Cabrera's personal soccer building man. There you go. From the Rumble Seat had it first. Subscribers knew like 7 months ago.
Yikes. I will say that it's rampant speculation that they will start any sort of new programs. I would say also that the reason that Tech The most likely reason, and this is an I feel, not an I think or an I know. I feel that the most likely reason for Tech not having soccer programs is revenue and the lack thereof. So, put together 2 and 2 here, and you might get 4, you might get 5. Who's to say? The couple of notes that I had on Batt, just from talking to other people in a couple of different discords and just sort of feeling my way through things and doing my own research. I think he's a very high ceiling. Like I think the potential here is very, very high, but it's still an unknown, right? It's an unknown what that will look like. The road to getting there is very unknown because he hasn't managed the entire athletic department. Yes, COO, but I think title inflation, one, is a thing, and two, you don't get exposure to all of the programs when you're mainly running revenue generation, right? So that's something that is a bit of a concern to me. I think on some of the names that were floating around the internet, he actually wasn't even on the board, and a lot of those other names I think we saw had some athletic experience, so or athletic management experience. So it's interesting. That's definitely a concern on the table. And then the other thing that came to mind, and I think we mentioned this when it comes to some of the recruiting struggles that Georgia Tech has had in the past. How hard is it to fundraise at Bama? Right? Like at a certain point, the Bama brand speaks for itself and hoovers in money.
And it's gotten easier too. I mean, once Saban came in and really changed the dynamic of things, like they went from losing 7 straight Iron Bowls to now losing anything is a surprise.
God, they lost Iron Bowls to Tommy Tuberville.
Oh, they lost a lot of Iron Bowls to Tommy Tuberville. A lot of them, not just 1 or 2. A lot of them.
That's disgusting.
Which I know is specific to not specific, but it's that when you change the tides that well, it becomes very easy to fund things.
Good pun.
Also see the Golden State Warriors.
Good pun. But I think for number one, I think you can't really that's kind of, you kind of throw your arms up and be like, okay, well, you're taking a risk, but it's a calculated risk, and you're keying in on what we know to be a problem for Georgia Tech, right? That revenue generating piece that you are behind, both in terms of TV revenue and in terms of donations and in terms of just generic like revenue coming into the system. And the second bit is Batt also brings some experience being a leader of fundraising at ECU, and ECU is like its own bubble in Greenville, but there's evidence of him doing it multiple places, right? So that makes me feel a little better about his ability to fundraise at disadvantageous situations and not just rely on the curly mullet A on his chest to make money. I think another point that's important to mention here, especially along with the concerns about his athletic department experience, one of the things that's mentioned from his Alabama bio is he was day-to-day leadership for the executive team of athletics, and he was the sport administrator specifically for men's basketball. So he has some experience managing a single sport and managing a team of administrators. So maybe I was wrong in my original assessment, but whether that translates to the entire department of 17 programs, I think that's still an open question. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Great crowd. I didn't think that I answered things so thoroughly.
I'll add you one more note that I thought about as soon as I saw the hire, which is this felt like when the Hawks hired Travis Schlenk from the Warriors, who very similar style of helped grow a team and a business to a super team in a lot of ways, and both the players on the court for the Warriors the last 10 years, but also just that brand becoming iconic with the Lakers and the Celtics across the board now. And here we have Batt helping chauffeur some of that at a very similar program comparatively in the different context of college football and NCAA sports, and then bringing it to Atlanta. So that's cool. But then also another program that's obviously been there a while, but could use a kick in the butt.
Yeah.
Jake, any last words?
Yeah. I think I need to hear the guy talk. So tomorrow ought to be interesting. Like it seems like it's all just us projecting stuff onto him so far. It'll be interesting to hear what he says and then what he does in his first, couple hundred days.
Damn, we should have recorded this tomorrow after the press conference. Well, that's neither here nor there. The last thing I will say is that you will see some information about Batt being Cabrera's number one candidate. That I also think that is what was reported or is in the press release. They always say that, so just keep that in mind. We don't really know what happened in terms of negotiations. We don't have an inside source or anything, but that is a standard, like a standard statement in some of these things. So keep that in mind. Anything else before we move on?
Nah,
I'm seeing head shakes to move on. So a couple of news items from football before we move on. Running backs coach Mike Daniels resigned inauspiciously a little bit on the same day that Batt was hired on the 14th. There has been no word as to why, and I don't think it's appropriate to speculate. So we are going to leave that one simmering that way. Later this week is a Thursday game for Georgia Tech football. That's Thursday, October 20th versus UVA. Tickets are still on sale. I think it was like $20 on StubHub the last time I checked. So
national television.
National television. Oh boy. We'll be right back to talk about more Georgia Tech news right after this short break.
You guys know what we're here for. This is a Section 103 podcast. We love their stuff. Stephen and the gang over there do great work. As you know, always free shipping on orders over $70. And I think I'm going with the Coach Key hoodies as our featured shirt of the day. They aren't out yet, but you can pre-order them. They have the full long sleeve version with, the hoodie drawstrings and all that good stuff, or the Coach Keyified version with short sleeves. I've never understood a short sleeve sweatshirt, and I'm not about to start understanding now. Or you could buy the long sleeve one and chop the sleeves off yourself. But, as cool as that would be, I think that would be mean to such a high quality and soft design. That being said, like we said, free shipping on orders over 70, and you can find them at section103.com and at section 103 on Twitter.
Welcome back to Scions of the Southland for October 16th. Let's kick it over to talking about women's basketball a little bit. A full preview will be coming later this month, but we want to talk a little bit about their recruiting class and also a little bit about ACC Tipoff week, since that was this past week. Mr. Purdy, what do you have for me?
Yeah, so the newest recruit that got announced was Deja Thomas, 6'3" forward from Houston, which the note there I have is size, which is not, we'll talk about this in a little bit, just that was our advantage last year between Kubai and Hermosa and Stroutmane, and that will not be the advantage this year. So that's a good get. Especially considering that's just where that is. I think we had another recruit that came in earlier in the week. I'm forgetting her name, and I know she is Lithuanian, but that is all I remember.
I did not see
the Spanish and Eastern European pipeline continues to be strong.
The recruit was from Monteverde, whatever the one in Florida is called.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go find it. But yes, there were two recruits this week. I will say that Thomas is in the top 100 on ESPN. She's number 66. So that's pretty cool.
That's very good.
And Tony Morgan last year was, I think, in the top 10 or at least the top 25. So Nell is still working the boards in terms of tip-top recruiting. Jake, do you have any thoughts about this before we move on to talking about ACC Tipoff?
Sounds like we're just trying to recruit every basketball player that comes out of Monteverde, because that was DeVoe's alma mater, I believe. So interesting stuff. Otherwise, I mean, for newer listeners of the podcast, I'm not generally your recruiting guy. It ain't starting for football, and it ain't starting for this either. So that's about all I got.
Lame. ACC Tipoff. Mr. Purdy, what do you got on the women's basketball side?
This is going to look a lot different than it did last year. Last year's team was, as I said, it was a lot of size. It was a lot of good rebounding and 3-point shooting when we needed it from Lotta Mailatin and from Sarah Bates. occasionally a desperation heave from Kubai. She nailed a few of those. But that's where the offense was. I mean, we said before we started recording, we basically played the Iowa defense and offense strategy in women's basketball. That's how we beat UConn, though. Like, we just completely stifled them and then held the ball for a long time on offense and got buckets as needed, and then beat UConn. And it was quite something. That will not be this year's team. We do not have Loda Myladinen. We don't have Sarah Bates. We don't have Lorella Kubai, and we're not as big anymore. We instead have Cameron Swartz and Bianca Jackson, who are transfers, who are a little bit taller, can shoot, and are fast. And Nell at Tipoff said that's going to have to be how we're going to have to play this year, because that's where our strengths are now.
One thing I took away from watching the tip-off wasn't just the speed. It was also like the diversity of playing positions that kind of got bandied about, not only by the players, but also by Nell. Mm-hmm. I believe, to paraphrase Nell, the line was something along the lines of, it's not important where you're playing on the floor. It's just getting out there. That's a poor paraphrase, but it's a matter of saying, there, it sounds weird to say point guard by committee, but you're not always going to have a regular number one or a regular number two. It's about filling the role and getting your best five for a given situation too on the floor. Because, if you're just playing your best five players, sometimes there's times we need to go big or to grab a foul or, to make a clutch three. So yeah, I thought that was in particularly interesting, noteworthy, and also kind of hopeful, right? This is her saying, hey, like, we were able to have this much success playing out of, I guess, a traditional Nell Fortner system. And now she's talking about going up tempo, and that's exciting. And being able to play a very uniquely defined brand of basketball on top of the one that we did with the existing talent. So.
Yeah, they were very defined roles last year. We also got 5 new guards from ever since this recruiting cycle between transfers and incoming freshmen. So it's the status of the team is very different, and just the makeup of position wise and where we need to put people in. It's so much different. I think we probably technically had 5 guards last year, but we lost 2 of them to injury and transferring by the second game of the year. So that changed things. But
it'd be super nice if someone like the ACC Volleyball Twitter account or the ACC Volleyball fan page put together a master list of all of the incomings and outgoings.
Yes.
For Tech and also for the rest of the conference, because that was super useful when we were doing.
I have a semblance of one just for Tech. I have a semblance of one because I wrote about the outgoings and I have some of the incomings. One of the incomings, should we let's just jump ahead to Tony Morgan, who might be. I'm not going to say, I don't want to put anything in the terms of like the savior category or like we'll bring Tech women's basketball to the promised land, but she's as good as a recruit as we've gotten in a long time. She was number 24 on ESPN's board, just to know that we've been getting that top 100. She's only 5. She's 5'9", so it's not adding to the. It's straying away from the whole size thing we had. This is a speedy shooter who can create contact, can shoot from the free throw line. Already at 72%, which would have been second on Tech's team last year if she played for us and just shot free throws. Like, that would have been second best. We were not a free throw shooting team at all. And she averaged 26-4 in her last year of high school, which was fantastic. She won the All Big Ben Player of the Year, which is some Florida award, but she won it 2 years in a row, which that felt notable. But she's fast. She's got good flavor in terms of her offensive ability. And I think my thought is right now should be Aaliyah Love's backup. I don't know if that's the case. No idea. But I think Swartz and Jackson will still get the primary minutes as fifth years and much more experienced and ACC title awards in terms of Cameron Swartz being the reigning most improved. So I would be shocked if she didn't get minutes, because if she's going to be able to help with the speed part and give critical minutes off for everyone else when they need it for a breather, that's where she's going to slide in, is my guess.
Let's jump over to the men's side. Jake, you mentioned earlier in the episode that you spent a lot of your prep time watching Pastner speak at ACC Tipoff, and man, he had some comments in this session.
If by a lot you mean the fact that somebody, I presume at Georgia Tech, posted it to a different YouTube channel than normal, then yeah, because I'd watched the women's stuff a couple of days ago on Friday night or something, just absentmindedly, and I was like, I never came across the men's stuff. They usually post clips like this, and there's for those that don't know, Georgia Tech's YouTube channel is like Ramblin' Rec Tube, and apparently there's like a second Ramblin' Rec Tube out there. But yeah, no. Long story short, I did watch Passner's blurb. It's like 15 minutes. It wasn't anything too crazy. In addition to some of the reading I've been doing, and I think we've really seen a lot of the expected themes come across. That is mentioning that a lot of young players got some time last year. I think maybe that was a little bit overemphasized, in my opinion. I think there are quite a few older players who definitely have been around for a while. Love Jordan Usher, love Mike DeVoe, but definitely had been. They got a significant number of minutes, so I wouldn't say that was necessarily all all them. Anyways, all young guys. That said, so this year will be more of a Leaf turn now without Jose, Moses, Jordan, and Mike. In addition, he named a couple players that need to step up. The one name that rattles in my head for there is Debo Coleman. I think maybe that might be my own confirmation bias because I love Debo Coleman and I want him to play really well this year. Really fun player to watch and should be interesting to see him kind of step into a leadership role. And he also mentioned that Rodney Howard needs to be in the conversation for the ACC's most improved. And to that, I say no kidding because our big men were a black hole last year and coming off of Lammert, Banks, and Wright. I think, in my opinion, I think Miles Kelly's going to get better. He seemed just a little bit off last year, and that's something that practice and getting used to the speed of the game can fix. Same with Debo Coleman. There was times when he was hot and times that he wasn't. I think it's much more transferable for those shots to start to fall than it is for a big man to suddenly get not awkward out there, for lack of a better term. That's something we really needed to see.
Tell me a little bit about the other things that Passner said in this press conference, because I just kept seeing clips of Passner firing off the most Josh Passner of takes. Please just walk us through it.
I don't know what goes through Mark Packer's head. He's an ACC network host. For those who don't know, he was with Packer and Durham, and now he's, I assume, on a morning show. I don't know what they did once Wes was out of there. Anyways, Packer just gets Josh Passner to say the darndest things. Every time Josh is on, I'm like, man, why did you say that? But anyways, there's a couple weird takes that he had in that UNC is a national number one and UVA is the ACC's number one team. I don't know how that works. Maybe I can wrap my head about it saying, UVA is a team that can, get a double bye and win the conference tournament, but North Carolina is the deepest in March Madness. But both of those are kind of dice rolls. So I don't know there. And I also saw that he mentioned wanting a full round robin, i.e. 28 conference games, which would essentially make the entire season a conference round robin, which I don't think that's the worst thing in the world either for ticket sales or for interest.
Build the whole plane out of ACC basketball.
I would love to go to 28 if it meant we kept UGA, maybe some combination of state or some mid-major type team on there. But I don't know. Tech doesn't have in basketball a ton of out of conference rivals, maybe a rotating Tennessee or Kentucky type thing. But really, ACC's that's what puts the butts in the seats, right? Getting Notre Dame, Duke, UNC at home, and maybe ACC Big Ten Challenge. This is all me shooting from the hip here, but in terms of weird takes, those were definitely odd ones. I do have one more legitimate thing that I do want to come back to, but if you guys have any thoughts on how UNC and UVA can both be number one, that was the one that had me most go, oh gosh, next he's going to say there's going to be 12 ACC teams in the tournament or something like that.
Here's how Bernie can still win, Jake.
I don't know the makeup of those two teams. I don't follow ACC basketball enough to know the names and everything and how that works out. What I do know from the NBA playoffs last year, though, is that we knew the Brooklyn Nets were not going to be the top seed in the Eastern Conference by the end of it, but we did know that because they had Kyrie and Kevin Durant, that there was a shot they could still win it all just because they had those guys. So in a tiny game sample, you would hate to play them. Over the longer term, it's okay. So my guess is somewhere in there he's rationalizing you would hate to play UNC immediately, but UVA's got the strength for a long-term thing. That's me trying to rationalize it in a way that I've seen it rationalized in the NBA, but I have no idea if that's actually the case here.
Yeah, I think it might just be the as I've kind of like sat here and thought about it more. I think that's Pastner saying UVA is going to take care of business in the conference slate. Go win 20
Yep.
games, or, go 19-1, 18-2. Whereas UNC just has more opportunities for a head scratcher, but it just translates funny on video. One more thing I do want to get in before we pivot away because I love men's basketball. I could talk about men's basketball for a long time, but I know y'all need to do some more homework before our preview. That being said, the time and score scenario comment that he made as well, that is going to be big. That is one of my biggest historic qualms about Pastner. And anyone who's listened to this show long enough has known that I'm not usually somebody who's like bad, even when bad is a deserved reaction. Josh Pastner's, late game schemes, who the ball's going to with 20 seconds on the clock and down a possession or something like that has never been something, in my opinion, that he has excelled at. So the fact that he said that they are spending an outsized amount of time focusing on that shows that they're putting time into something that needs to be worked on. Because quite frankly, not only did we lose a lot of games to good teams by 4 and 6 and 8 points last year, it was also something that we've seen in years past as well. One that sticks with me in particular, I think it was an NC State game in his first or second year that just ended with Todrick Jackson just heaving some wacky 3-point shot when you've got Josh Okogie right there, who is Josh Okogie. Just making sure the ball is going to the right guy. And if you only need two, get two, make those high percentage shots. So just
to be fair, Todrick Jackson did that specific thing a lot.
the human heart attack, Todrick Jackson. Do we really have to go through this? I think my medical bills will go up, but
a couple final notes. Renew your season tickets. The deadline, I think, for that is soon. Also, the season starts next month, so do that before the season starts. We will preview both teams. I think our schedule sheet had women's basketball next week and then men's the week after, but I'm not the person that keeps the schedule for the podcast. I'm just the one that keeps the time during the episodes. Let's move on to volleyball's week. They dispatched Clemson very easily in a nice little 3-set sweep. And then they had a little bit of trouble with Duke, especially a very weird third set en route to a 3-1 win. They were up with match point at, I think, 25-23, and then ended up giving the set to Duke at 20.
Yeah, they had room for error and committed the errors.
See, that was something that I feel like I've been sitting on the edge of my seat thinking all year is like, gosh, like, okay, we can mess this up 3 times before it gets bad. Like I viscerally remember having that reaction during a home game recently that I was at. Where's the clutch?
They just have a lot of trouble closing out games and closing out sets, and this was a prime example of that, because in that third set, which Duke ended up winning, it went to 30-28 for a Duke win, despite Tech having the advantage moving into that final stage of the set. And then in the fourth set, they had match point like 3 or 4 times before finally putting it away. So that's disappointing. Set drop to Duke is Tech's first set drop to an unranked team since the first weekend of the season. I think it's their first set dropped to any ACC team, or any ACC team that's not Louisville or Pitt. So something to keep in mind. Julia Bergman is now 9th all-time in the program in terms of kills and 5th in terms of service aces. So that's pretty cool.
He will get to 8th too, because Brand B is only about 100 ahead of her in kills. So that we'll be talking about that in a couple weeks.
Jake, let's go to you first on this week for volleyball.
I mean, honesty time. The first game happened mostly while I was in choir, and I wouldn't say that. How do I put this? It's been a long time since we played Clemson in a game that's actually taught something to us about the team. They just haven't been on the same plane the last 3 or 4 years. It's a take care of business game. Duke's been higher in the conference. It's a road game. Winning at Cameron Indoor. Ooh, spooky. That's a men's basketball joke. I don't know. It's the place is a mausoleum for women's volleyball and women's basketball, which is a damn shame compared to how they pack it for the men and just the general campus vibes around sports there. I don't have enough time to go into that. But in terms of
Keep it moving.
You can't write too much into dropping a single set into a team that you're better than. It's going to happen sometimes. They won the game. Like, that's when you say, hey, go grind the tape and get better for the next game, right? I don't know that any of that's unfair, right, Jack?
Maybe. Here's what I'm noticing. Now, I did not watch the Duke game, but I'm looking at the timeline of that third set, and it is remarkably similar to the third set of the Clemson game, except it got worse. We took care of Clemson the first two sets, no problem. And then I think we got a little complacent. It didn't. Well, it looked like we were playing fine, but we didn't have to do anything special. There wasn't added effort required to get through Clemson. And then as soon as Clemson was like ready to really start playing in the third set, they beat us up immediately, and we were down a few points, and Cully had to kind of scramble to keep things together. And I mentioned in my article, I was just like, hey, it was Clemson, so it was fine, but like we can't just lose ourselves in the third set and expect everything to be great the next time. And then what do you know? Against Duke, we go down we go down 10-4 in that third set. Like we were out of it pretty early on. The same kind of story. We were fine the first two sets, 21-5-15, 25-16, and then for whatever reason, just not in it enough, and just get smoked out of the gate to have to battle back. Eventually get back to match point. So I think that's a good thing there, though, is that in both of these times we were down early, but clawed our way back to match points. Then that gets back into the closing part of like actually putting the thing away when you need to, when it's close. But I don't know if we want to call 2 as a pattern or a trend, but that's worrying. We did score 5 straight points to get back to 11-10 in that stretch. So like it was immediate, came right back. But this is something here. I hope this doesn't happen this weekend. I think we'll be able to get through these next 2 games this weekend just fine. But I'll be looking at that third set very particularly to see how we respond if we win the first 2.
Yeah, I think it's a trend, right? I haven't looked at the data all out to really say for sure, but at least anecdotally, like it's just a continuing problem with being able to finish out these games. And I don't know what the solution is. I think when things are obvious, like Pimentel is getting targeted on serve receive, and that just needs to be cleaned up. Like when things are that obvious and the team has watched the tape and is taking advantage of it, that's one thing. But when you just sort of slip into cruise control or autopilot late in a match and just lose the concentration at the end of a set, like that's a completely different vibe, right? I don't know whether it's an error situation. Like I have to just look at the data, and I haven't had a chance to do it yet. Like it could be errors.
I know, at least for at least for Clemson, errors was not the problem. That was one of my notes, was that we only had 6 attack errors and then 8 combined for service and return errors. So actually we did better there. Clemson was not a threat though in that sense. Duke against I closed the stats for the Duke game, but I'm gonna guess it was more just because the sheer volume of points available was more between over extra points in the third set and then having to play a fourth.
Jake, any final notes before we start moving towards looking to the future?
Nah, and I'm not even sure there's much that this week can tell us either.
Speaking of this week, Boston College and Syracuse both at home. The Boston College game, Friday, October 21st. That's a 7 p.m. tip. And then Syracuse at home again in O'Keefe, Sunday, October 23rd. That is a 1 p.m. tip. No updated AVCA rankings just yet. Jack, you get the last word here. The last thing you have in our notes is any losses before Louisville will be immensely consequential. Walk that out for us before we move on.
Well, we just don't play anybody that would make us look that would make our RPI. If we lose to anyone but Pitt or Louisville, our RPI is going to suffer, which is going to matter in the coaches poll. It's going to matter in the NCAA top 10 or whatever. They start making that list longer. I mean, it's just the thing. If you have to hold serve and beat the people you have to beat is the point there. And there's too many good teams in the ACC and in the Big Ten that if we lose badly to a team that we shouldn't lose badly to, that threatens if we're going to have home court NCAA tournament games, which we're still on track to do. And I think that's the main thing. If we hold serve, even if we lose to Louisville again, and we play Pitt again, am I correct in saying that?
We play Louisville at home and then Pitt away.
Pitt on the road. Okay, yeah. If we lose both of those games, I don't think that will cost us hosting the first round of the NCAA tournament. If we win one of them, I think that I'm not sure about that. Obviously, there's a lot of other games that need to play out there. I mean, the Big Ten still has to eat itself alive as well, a lot more than we have. We eat ourselves alive in the ACC.
Our
one win,
RPI is still a little soft though.
It's a little soft. Losing to Arkansas was a big L in that department. So there's still a little bit of room for error, but it's really just against the really best, against the best teams. Because as we saw with Ohio State, they just kept staying in the top 10 because they kept losing to good teams. As long as we only lose to good teams, that's better than nothing. But that's better if we than the alternatives. But have to win convincingly going out to hold serve here.
Cool. Let's move on to some ACC football picks. I think this week is a very interesting slate. So let's start on Saturday at noon on ABC. This is Syracuse at Clemson. Syracuse is undefeated, ranked number 14th in the nation. Clemson is number 5. Clemson is favored by 2 touchdowns. Mr. Purdy, what do you got?
I'm still going to take the Tigers. I hate that either of these teams have. I mean, I hate that Syracuse. There's going to be a lot of orange. Be a lot of orange in this game. But also, and I think Clemson still got it. Syracuse winning. I mean, I don't know if they'll have had a bigger win in program history. I'm not well versed in their football to know, but that'd be incredible if they did win. But because it's at Clemson, they know they have to show up for that early kick. Not going to build up much drama. I think they take care of business.
Jake,
yeah, I can't see Syracuse winning this game as much as I want to be able to. I'm taking Clemson even to cover as well.
Okay, let's move on to ESPN 3 / your local RSN. Noon 30 features Duke and Miami. Miami favored by 8.5 points. Jack, what you got?
8.5. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Duke's heck. Us beating them, I must have set something off. I'll stick with Miami. 3-3. I thought they were gonna be honestly like 2-4 by this point. So, yeah, I'll take this. I'll take a Miami against this slipping Duke team.
Jay.
Miami at home. I think I'd still take him. I don't actually. No, I'm going back on it. I think Duke covers, but I'm not convinced that they win. I think it'll be a pretty close game. Both of these teams are, like many in the Coastal, fundamentally flawed.
Everyone in the Coastal is bad, same as it ever was. Speaking of teams in the Atlantic, actually, 3:30 on ACC Network, Boston College at number 13, Wake Forest. Wake favored by 20.5 points. Jake, you're up first.
Wake all day.
Oof. And Jack.
Wake all night.
Woof. Moving on to the final game of your ACC weekend, 8 p.m. on ACC Network, Pittsburgh at Louisville. Peculiarly, this has a even line. The over-under is at 57, which seems weirdly low. Jake, you're up first.
Yeah, I have no idea how this is an even line. Give me Pitt.
Pitt should win this one walking away, but I will hear any argument, Mr. Purdy.
Yeah, I haven't watched Louisville play football this year, so I sadly don't have the knowledge to really say how much of a fight they can put up. I can say you can see their football stadium from the airplane if you're flying into Chicago and there's no clouds, but I'm still going to take Pitt.
Chicago? What?
You can see Louisville Stadium from flying into Chicago?
Mm-hmm. Yep, you can.
Like from 30, you're not talking about short final, right?
No, when I flew up for the Notre Dame game on Southwest, I was able to identify all of Louisville's campus and then the entirety of Indianapolis. Yeah.
I thought you were talking about like as you come into land. I was like, what?
What? No.
Yeah.
Having driven through it, I was able to identify like where all the various parts of the campus was from above.
as a Chicago to Atlanta route frequenter, you kind of go diagonally across Indiana until you hit the lake. So yeah, that I usually kind of zone out past Chattanooga, but you pick it back up again when the land gets flat.
Wow, do people fly to the Midwest or something? I thought you just fly over that.
No, we can't all be big New York, Boston, Acela corridor boys.
Well, maybe you should consider it. Well, one thing that Jack has considered for his sicko picks of the week is a trip to Hawaii. Tell us
Oh no,
more.
it's not. It's not. It's not in Hawaii. It's in Colorado State.
Damn it, it's
Uh,
in Fort Collins?
it's in Fort Collins. Yeah. Diedrich Parson has came up 136-yard 3-touchdown game for the Rainbow. What's their name? The Rainbow Warriors.
Rainbow
Rainbow
Warriors.
Warriors.
Rainbow Warriors. Give me them
Warriors.
Rainbow Warriors covering and beating Colorado State in a very green and gold game.
Go Bows. Jake, what you got for me?
Yeah, I actually was going to do this one live, and the way I had settled is I am going with Texas Tech versus West Virginia. I think both of those teams are incredibly fundamentally flawed, and it's at Jones AT&T Stadium, and anything can happen once you're west of Dallas because that's nothing for miles around. So I think I'm still taking Texas Tech here, but it should be a weird little Big 12 smackdown.
There's not even a network listed for this one. Where is this game supposed to be? That's bizarre.
That's a great question. Who knows?
Anyway, the assignment was to pick a sicko game, and both of you picked like potentially legitimately interesting ones. So I picked the sicko one to do the work for the rest of yous. Wednesday, 7:30 on ESPN2, Georgia State
Hawaii
at
is
two
a
and
very
four.
sicko game,
Hawaii is
sir.
not sicko.
2-5.
Hawaii,
2-5 Hawaii versus 1-5 Colorado State isn't sicko enough for you.
no, you pick weekday games to be more of a degenerate. Also, if you bet on weekday games, you are a degenerate. Anyway, 7:30 on Wednesday. Georgia State at 2 and 4.
Akshay
App State at 3 and 3.
gatekeeping Ishwaran.
Anyway,
Who you
App
picking?
State by 10. I will take State to cover because both of these teams, as Jake likes to mention and has said multiple times today out of nowhere, both of them are fundamentally flawed. App State can't keep a lead. Georgia State doesn't look functional at times. This one's in Boone. It's going to be very, very fun. I think that is about it for us this week. Hopefully, this was a short one. I haven't actually checked the recording time. But
It's
Mr.
not.
Grant, any final words before we move
I got
on?
one last thing. Do not call on Twitter for the game on Thursday to be a blackout. That is not one of Georgia Tech's colors. If anything, it should be a whiteout.
Yes.
I'm just saying, there are some great tech apparel makers out there, including Section 103. You can't find black apparel on their store because it's not one of our school colors. Go buy something white from them or something gold or something. Even navy will do, or gray. I'd take gray. But blacking out the stadium is not the move. I will be there. I would recommend y'all be there too because it should be some interesting Thursday night football. I'm excited for a football game, boys. That's where I'm at. I'm excited.
It might be legitimately better than whatever NFL Thursday Night Football is, which I'm actually about to check while Jack gives any
Those
final
have been
notes.
bad. Those have
Man,
been
I
really
want to look
bad.
at that too. I mean, if you want a real sickos pick, I mean, there's UAV Western Kentucky on Friday night, but oh god. Ugh.
Okay, so here's what ESPN is putting on, or no, this is on Amazon Prime for TNF for the NFL. The Saints versus the Cardinals in Arizona. The Saints are 2 and 4. The Cardinals are 2 and 4, and it's also Call of Duty release week, so you know Kyler Murray is not going to be on top of it. It's
Oh
going to be
my
bad.
god. Will it have come out though by then? Will it be, or
It'll
did
be
it get the
early.
beta?
So I've heard multiple things. I've heard that early access is campaign only and not multiplayer. So it really depends on how much of a true gamer Kyler Murray is.
Right. Okay. This will
Isn't
be
it
interesting.
established that he is a true gamer?
Well, yeah, but only true sicko gamers play the Call of Duty campaigns these days.
Yeah.
As a noted true sicko gamer who only plays Call of Duty campaigns and doesn't really do multiplayer.
The more you know.
This has gotten off the rails. Anyway, yes, I legitimately Tech versus Virginia might be better than Saints Cardinals. So watch that instead. Anything else, boys?
surprise update. I want to thank our audience because we crossed the 200 listens for last week's episode, which I did not see coming. And we've only had twice in the last couple of years. So, very nice to see. That was a big surprise.
Yes. I don't know how we hit 1,000 that first year we did it on one episode, but
it's called the algorithm.
That would be great.
It's the same thing as TikTok. That's how they hook you up.
Go tell your friends. Go tell your friends. This means a lot to us to see that number.
We're not
thanks for letting me know, Jack.
We're glad at 200, but we want 500. 500.
Yeah.
Jake, take us home.
Yep. Thanks for listening. As always, this has been From the Rumble Seat, Science of the Southland. You can find us at fromtherumbleseat.com. There are articles that go up with these where you can comment. You can also add us on Twitter, reply to this in the comments, and email us at fromtherumbleseat@gmail.com. We read all that stuff, and it definitely helps us shape what we do here. So keep that in mind. If there's something that we aren't talking about or something that we should, let us know. In terms of finding us individually, I'm at Jake Grant 98 on Twitter. Jack is at Jack Nicholas. Akshay, if you find him, I'll give you a prize. I don't know. He's weird about that stuff. And as always, we'd like to thank Section 103. That's at Section 103 on Twitter and section103.com. Great work by all of them all the time. Go vote on the next design and go buy something nice. In terms of content from the Rumble Seat, we did release a many part engineering a program series just about the existential situation of the Georgia Tech athletics program and the school itself. So go give that a read. Let us know your thoughts there as well. For Jack and Akshay, thanks for listening. Good night and go Jackets.